Well, hi everybody. My name's Jason Airey. The company's CMS Supatrak. We provide vehicle telematics solutions to the transport industry, and predominantly the waste sector in the UK. Today I've come along really to give you an overview of our journey. About 3.5 years ago, we decided to look at other parts of the world, specifically Europe, and how we could actually take our products and services into Europe and really just discuss the sort of highs and lows of that, taking into account areas such as overcoming cultural differences, which I think is kind of topical at the moment with the Scottish, you know, and the fact they want to be independent. So something that we've seen in Europe. Operational challenges, again, big issues there in terms of delivering the solutions in areas that we perhaps don't understand too well. And really then just the whole area of financial compliance and political challenges. It's fair to say that you would have thought in Europe there wouldn't have been many of those, but there were quite a few challenges for us in the different areas of Europe. Oops. So the first thing really, we're talking about transferring our technology into other markets and other territories. So I thought it might be appropriate really to talk a little bit about what that technology is. One of the areas that we work heavily on is in the waste collection industry. There's sophisticated vehicles that are used to collect the waste, and these vehicles require lots of sophisticated systems on them, probably more sophisticated than pretty much any other industry. And it's fair to say we do work directly with a lot of the vehicle manufacturers, people like Dennis Eagle, Ross Rocker, people like Giesing, Norber and Mercedes. And really, this slide just depicts what we call connected fleet management. And what connected fleet management is all about is taking all the information on that vehicle and using that information for all sorts of stuff. So what sort of stuff do we do it on? Well, things like, for example, if we look down here, we've got fuel saving. Yeah, obviously a big issue is the amount of fuel that these vehicles use. Obviously, fuel burnt in a vehicle equates to carbon output. Yeah, and a lot of our customers are actually targeted on reducing their carbon output. Yeah, so one of the areas that we work heavily on is putting our technologies into vehicles, managing the driver behaviour, using our own driver eco-coaches, and then from that we can reduce their fuel costs. So companies using that, for example, in the UK, people like Veolia, CETA, Biffa, and they're seeing savings on average between 7 and 13% on fuel, which is significant when you consider some of these are spending £150 million a year just collecting our rubbish and our recycling and so on. What we have, I won't go through all these in detail, but what it does demonstrate, it's quite a sophisticated area. So we look at things like weighing bins. Yeah, a lot of the areas we'll talk about later on, particularly within Europe, is they've been ahead of the game. They weigh a lot of their refuse, yeah, and some of them get charged by the weight. Okay, in Germany, for example, each bin, in about 50% of all the municipal contracts, has a tag in, so they know that they've collected your bin. Yeah, so a lot of this technology just expands out. Other areas we work heavily in are things like diagnostics on vehicles. So, for example, if there is a problem with a vehicle, we can identify that problem and help the OEM, the manufacturer, to actually fix that problem quicker, and sometimes solving the problem before the vehicle actually has an issue. Areas such as safety, I think we seem to be the world leaders in safety, don't we, in the UK, health and safety. And one of the big areas for that is cameras. So, you know, it always amazes me every time I go to Europe and demonstrate the camera solutions that we have on vehicles. They all laugh at me and just say that you're all crazy Englishmen, because why would you want to put a camera everywhere? We have cameras in everything, you know. So, well, particularly, for example, in Germany, a lot of interesting areas around privacy. So if you go to Germany and Google, a lot of the areas aren't actually mapped with Street View. So there's good examples there. And really just the overall area of compliance, TACO being a big one. Yeah, obviously, again, these vehicles, we need to be compliant there in terms of delivering to the legislation, both in the UK and across Europe. Other areas we work with are things like insurance. And ironically enough, through our relationships with the German underwriting company, HDI Gerling, we provide lower cost insurance through HDI Gerling. They reduce the premiums using our data to manage those. as we go through. It's a little bit about the technology. Okay, CMS Supatrak really has been around delivering these solutions for about 8 years. So we create and build our technology, our vehicle hardware. Ironically, we actually build it in Scotland, so another issue for us, potentially. We may be buying it in euros or maybe krone. They're close to Sweden, aren't they? We don't know. So we build the technology, and really we focused on the waste sector. Why? Well, they got big fleets. They're targeted to reduce their carbon output. They need to reduce their costs. So we focus very much on the UK fleets of the major operators, and that both includes the, we might call subcontractors, vehicle manufacturers, and also the municipalities. So things like Birmingham City Council, we look after the fleet here in Birmingham. Notable customers on there from a worldwide presence, people like Veolia. Yeah, they pretty much have a stretch across the whole world, as does Suez with their CETA brand. And we also work with other companies that manufacture, for example, these vehicles and body units. So Geesink Norba, for example, is a Dutch company operating out of Emmeloord. So we started the journey. How did we start that journey? Well, we did a rollout in the UK for CETA across their fleet of trucks. So if you do see a CETA truck on the road, they should be driving very well, hopefully, with our technology. They were quite glad that we'd done a good job, and they said, hey, well, why can't you have a look at some of our other countries? You know, we operate pretty much across the world. We've proved it in the UK. What can you guys do for us, in other parts of Europe? And we said, okay, well, let's see what we can do there. And I remember sort of sat there, we're based in Swindon, around our conference table thinking, oh, this is all good fun then, so how on earth are we going to do this? Fortunately, with being led by our customers, with like CETA, it gives us the ability to go into the countries and basically run trials. So we can basically go through the different countries, run the trials on those particular vehicles, and deliver the savings on those vehicles, which is kind of key. So we set off really looking at these countries. So we looked at the areas around Netherlands, so looking at the Netherlands, looking at Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany, Poland, France. We did go further afield. We landed up in Dubai. That was quite nice. You know, nice and sunny place to go to talk to drivers. And really, we started to look at what the problems would be. So luckily, customers led us, and I think that's kind of key. You know, if anybody wants to take their products and services into another territory, if they can get their customers to lead them, that makes a massive difference. Because straight away, what we're trying to put in place is a success story with a case study, which we can then use to gain other business. And we'll show how we did that when we went into Europe. So what's the problems? Language. Ironically, I don't speak any languages at all. I was actually useless at languages. I think I could do bonjour and ask where the toilet is in German, I think now. So that's about it. But ironically, the English language is pretty much spoken across Europe. It's fair to say the French don't like speaking it, but they can speak it. So if you look at what we do have an advantage with the English language, and we shouldn't forget that really. However, we provide systems, solutions, web-based solutions. And one of the key things we do that's quite clever is we basically allow the people that use the system to translate it. So if we've got, for example, a guy in Poland who runs our Polish office, every time we do an update in the UK, lets him know, he goes in, he translates it. So the whole thing is being translated in all the languages all the time. And some of the problems we have, for example, is we may, if you take Benelux, for example, or Belgium, you've got a user using a system who logs in French. They've got a Polish driver who needs information in the cab in Polish. They've got a Flemish driver. They might be speaking, obviously, Dutch. They may be speaking French. So one of the big problems for us was having different ways of delivering different language to different users of the solutions, which is kind of key. The other problem we suffer from a lot is that we need localized specialist vehicle technicians. Again, being led by our customer was fantastic, because what that did for us was it allowed us to tap into their resources. So they would use subcontractors. They told who the good subcontractors were and who the bad ones were. And over that period, we've developed, obviously, installation engineers now pretty much across the whole of Northern Europe, which has been good. The other one is local account management. You know, we've got a Dutch guy at the moment who runs a lot of our German accounts. They're sort of okay with that, but they'd rather have a German guy running the German accounts. So, local account management is key. And what we've managed to do is set up offices now in France and Netherlands and also in Germany and Poland, with local speaking project managers that manage those particular rollouts. One of the important things that we do is we teach the drivers how to drive properly. So as well as teaching them, we have feedback in the actual vehicles themselves. So we need local trainers. So that in itself brings lots of challenges. I mean, in France, if we don't do it properly, they all go on strike. Without a doubt. And we talk about the issues there. So we have to have the right trainers using the right approaches. And we talk about those issues we had. Okay, so resolutions, what do we do? Well, what we also have, we spoke about earlier on working through lots of manufacturers who are based in Europe, people like Geesink Norba. A lot of these guys are actually down in the other hall. Novacom and MOBA is, we already work with these guys, delivering this connected fleet solution. So with those guys, we got to know them well, started to understand the market, and we leverage their expertise in their own home markets, which is key. And always with anything really, key people. We've now got key people. We've got our guy Jean-Paul down in France. We call him Crazy Frog, and he seems to like it, so he's quite happy with that. And he looks after the French side. We've got guys now in Germany, Poland. But again, it's all about people. Business is all about people. It doesn't matter whether we're actually employing someone in Swindon, whether we're employing them in Poland. It really doesn't matter. We've got to find those key people. And we did churn quite a few going through that process, but it had to be done. Okay, so we found those key people. We got those set up. The other important thing is process. I mean, a lot of stuff we do is process-driven. So this is the process to install this bit of kit in this type of vehicle. This is the process to work out how the driver's driving at the moment and how much fuel they're using. This is the process to make them drive better, and so on and so forth. And the important thing there is having those processes available online all the time and being updated when there's a problem. Okay, let's talk about some of the interesting experiences, especially the cultural stuff. It's like, going back to the Scotland thing in the UK, really. If you look at any of these countries on here, a lot of them have different regional requirements, We haven't done much work in Spain, but when we have, and you say you're Spanish, they say, no, I'm from Basque, or I'm from Catalonia. So, you're measuring that all the time. For us, when we're dealing with what you might call national companies, so if you take CETA, for example, when we work with them across their various sites across Europe, each one of them ultimately runs as an individual company, with their own set of accounts and personnel and their own culture areas. So if we take Germany, Germany's an interesting one for us. Germany is probably the biggest market, which we'd expect it to be for our technology. In terms of driver privacy, they're very, very careful. We had to work very closely with the unions. So unlike the UK, where, we do have unions, then we do work with them, Germany was on a different level, very much about, the unions had to agree the contract with the company before we could even start to look on the vehicles. And when we first worked with, I think it was CETA in Germany, even the head guy, a guy called Klaus Bender, we had to install the technology in his vehicle, so he could demonstrate to the rest of the unions. He was head of logistics in CETA Germany, so he could demonstrate he was using the technology. And I do remember the first review when we looked at him, we said, well, you were doing like 130 miles an hour, or whatever that is in kilometers an hour. And he said, yeah, I drive enthusiastically. But of course, it's allowed over there. But one of those things we try to push down a little bit, okay? The other thing we also measure, things like fuel theft, which is kind of interesting. Never had any instances of fuel theft in Germany. I think that demonstrates something. Okay, France. I love France. I think the employees have a lot of power. And, very often we've had issues, not because of us, we go to do something and they're on strike again. For all sorts of reasons. One of the things that shocked us to start with is what we need to know is who the driver is of the truck. Over here we have a tachograph and the driver puts their card in. If they get pulled over and then put their card in, the company could lose its operating license if they have too many of those issues. Game over for that company. In France, they don't put their cards in if they don't want to. and they don't talk to them about putting their cards in because they don't want to upset them. So, this whole thing about compliancy in France is actually very different to what it is in the UK. And we've also had a lot of issues with fuel theft. Yeah, one of the main reasons for rolling the system out in one of our customers is purely to identify and resolve the fuel theft issues. Yeah. Moving on to Poland. Interesting, very compliant. We arrived one morning, we've kitted out these vehicles, we're in Warsaw. You jump on a plane, you jump off the plane, you get in the car, in the multi-storey car park, it's -20. And I'm thinking, I didn't bring any jumpers with me, so that's a bit of an issue. So anyway, we pull out the car park, and we're the only car that's not driving around with permanent icicles on us. So we stand out like a sore thumb. We get on site to the Eco Coach in the morning. This is 5 in the morning. We say, where are the drivers? They actually live on site. Yeah, this is in a refuse collection depot. They live there in the week. They come out. They're very attentive in the way we do this and very compliant. So if you take the Polish drivers, for example, in that particular company, I think they were the guys that had the biggest success rate. What they achieved was far better than all the other countries. Fuel theft was an interesting one for us. This was identified from day one, but the answer was, look, it's part of their package. We don't pay them a lot. Yeah, there'd be a war if we start to clamp down on fuel theft. So pretty much turn a blind eye. So it's a kind of interesting one there for us. Okay, Netherlands. Netherlands, ironically enough, with our technology, is quite advanced, much more advanced, for example, than Germany or even France. And what we tend to find there, they've got a high level of driver management already in place. So it was quite a hard country for us to crack. And in fairness, at the moment, most of our resource, even for the guys in Netherlands, is focused in Germany and France and Belgium. Belgium, very good, but very careful about, again, employee privacy. We talk about the French and Dutch-speaking thing, which is another issue to bear in mind when you get there. But what we have found, they're really slow decision makers. They say something one day, and then they say, okay, we'll hold on now for another month, and it goes on and on and on. What did shock us, though, was that everybody's happy for it to be billed out of the UK company. We had visions of setting up subsidiaries in each particular country. Not a problem at all. So all our billing for all of our customers now in Europe is done out of the UK. Yeah, obviously in euros, but out of the UK, which I think is kind of key as we go through. Okay, let's look at financial, compliance and political challenges. It's fair to say that we focus on blue chip companies. Yeah, so we're very much about dealing with big companies. And it's fair to say when we did negotiate with a recent German company, a very big company, they said, what is this? They said, well, that says that if you pay us late, we charge you a percentage on the actual debt. They said, we never pay late. So we had to remove that, and guess what? They pay late. Why do they pay late? Well, as long as you've got everything signed off and you've got every character right on the invoice, yeah, and you've hand-delivered it, because you can't email it, and they keep losing them, yeah, they will pay it on time. So really just all those big company barriers to getting paid that everybody uses day in, day out. A big problem that we suffer from now is we've been quite successful in Europe. I think March was the first month where we billed more into Europe in euros we did in the UK, which causes issues. One of the big problems we have very much is the currency exchange rates and managing that problem. So, for example, we've got staff being paid in sterling in the UK. We've got a shed load of euros in a euro account. Every time we move it across, it costs us money. Yeah, and things like the banks, for example, won't net them off. Yeah, so unless you've got millions sat there in a bank, as a small business that we are, we don't have millions. They won't net those two elements off, which is a problem. So we have tried trying to talk the employees to take in euros if they go on holiday, but that didn't work either. So one of those areas. We have touched other countries. We've done trials in Brazil. Obviously, moving outside of Europe is a whole new ballgame. If you look at Brazil, you're talking about high import taxes and various methods of trying to overcome those issues. But that's obviously an area we haven't got into in detail. And import restrictions as well. In Dubai, for example, anything that is an electrical part for a car will get compounded and checked as it goes through. So there are big issues there in terms of doing that. Okay, what else have we got? Well, government intervention has been a bit of a problem for us in a couple of areas. Apparently, we'll go on to the German one first. In Germany, for example, one of the areas we do is we actually remap the engine management system on the vehicle. And why do we do that? Well, believe it or not, to reduce the fuel, but also to make it more drivable. Why would we do that? Well, think about it. You know, we're taking what is fundamentally a truck, we stick a bit of stationary plant on the back to pack rubbish and lift bins, yeah, and then wonder why the fuel economy is so rubbish. Well, we actually remap those engines to make them more fuel efficient. Not a problem anywhere in the world, but in Germany, you have to get approval from the government, the customer, to do a trial on that. And then you need full type approval on that engine. Yep, so that's one of the big issues for us there. France was delayed. We won a large tender with Veolia to roll out across their fleet in France. And the last thing President Sarkozy did before he left was he signed off the introduction of the eco-tax. Yeah, and the eco-tax is, I forget what the numbers are, but basically every kilometre you drive in your truck, you will pay so many euro cents. So they kitted out the country with all these cameras and tag systems to read these. And all ACA said, hey, let's hold on a second, because we're lobbying the government. We don't want to do this. We don't want to put the technology in. Where does your technology fit? So it all got put on hold. And then, funny enough, they put the eco-tax on hold. So that was a big one. That stopped a significant rollout for us for over a year and a half, which was a problem. And likewise in Poland, there's been some talk about changes in the way that they do their collection. So looking at weights and so on and so forth, that's had some big delays in Poland for us. And these are things you can't really anticipate. Yeah, they're either there or they're not there. And if you take the eco-tax as an example, it wasn't something that was on the agenda until the day that Sarkozy moved on. Okay, so what does it look like now? Well, our operational footprint is pretty much as we said. We've developed and continue to develop relationships with pretty much all the main players across Europe, or Northern Europe in the waste collection side, and also looking in some countries outside of that. So passenger transport's a big one in France. In Poland, obviously, they do a lot of transport logistics, which is key. So we develop that as we go through. So we've got a long way to go. This gives you an example here. The blue dots are basically, these are all vehicles running around. So you can see the UK is pretty populated with tens of thousands of blue dots. And then we've got little patches here and here. We need this here to look like that there. And if that looks like that there, hopefully I'll be sat on a yacht somewhere. That'd be ideal. So that's what we're trying to achieve. So what do we got to do now? Well, if you look at what we need to do, is we really need to start to build those companies now. So we're setting up the subsidiaries correctly in each particular country and starting to put the full budgetary management in place. We're also starting to build a business development team now in local language, which is key, and also working much more closely with these territory partners that we have. A good example there is, if you look at Germany, there's probably 4 main players in waste collection. There's a company called Remondis, CETA, Veolia, and a company called Alba. We work with Alba, we work with Veolia, we work with CETA. We don't work with Remondis yet because they work with somebody else. So we pretty much hit the big guys. Yep. There's thousands of little operators that we just can't, we don't have the distribution team to talk to. So a MOBA can help us. Yeah. They already have these companies as customers. Yeah. So they resell our product, and that's becoming obviously more and more successful as the time goes on. We decided to set up a multilingual help desk, so we set that up now in the UK. So we've got French and German speaking support desk people, which is kind of key. We did think about putting it out into Europe, but the problem is the skill sets, yeah? Complex systems, complex problems. We tend to have to be able to use the pool of resource we have in the UK. It's also worth saying we should have started working with UK export finance earlier. It's one of the areas that we sort of just got on and didn't really think about it, but at the moment we're working on a number of projects, for example, with the Export Working Capital Scheme, which is absolutely ideal for us. You know, if we get a big order through from company X in France, we talk to our bank, they talk to UKTI, and basically we can put a loan in place which is underwritten by, obviously, the British government. Yeah, which is kind of key. So that way we can get the working capital to then do that rollout on that particular project. In other countries, we may be looking at like buyer and supplier credit facilities, yeah, where that can be done with bonds and so on. I think that's kind of key. So what I would say, one thing we've learned is really use the UK export finance earlier than you think. If you get the right people, now each bank actually has a local, someone who actually supports them locally from the UK export finance, and it's definitely worth chatting to those guys, moving it forward. And the other one really is we've already started leveraging UKTI for Brazil and the USA. Particularly in Brazil, it's complex, yeah, what they're trying to do over there, and the laws and the import taxes. It's kind of key on how we actually move that one forward. Okay, so expansion really. What I would always say is be led by your customer. If you're a small business, if you're Coca-Cola, I don't think it's a problem. But if you're little old CMS Supatrak operating in the West Country in Swindon, it is a bit of a problem. So if you can be led by your customer, that takes out huge amounts of cost. It also puts you in contact with good people, you know, a bit like the local installers, a bit like the guys that work for us now. Some are actually ex-employees of those customers. So finding the right people is key. You know, you're managing people remotely. It's bad enough managing people in the office sometimes, isn't it? So you've got to get those right people. If you haven't got them, it just won't work. You're on a hiding to nowhere. We talked about working with resellers. They already have customers, yeah? What we're doing is upsell. You know, just plug this in, extra few pounds or euros a month in this case, and you will save all this money. Fantastic. Happy days. Language barrier is a big one. We sort of did it as we went along, probably the wrong way to do it. You know, again, if you wasn't too bad in places like Netherlands, but you try and put systems into French-speaking operators, they're not very happy if it isn't fully in French. So it's best to get it done as soon as possible if you can, and invest to get that out of the way. I've talked about UKTI, definitely do more and more work with those guys. You know, we're looking to Brazil as being a next market for us. And as I said, you know, I wish we'd actually spoke to the UK export finance earlier. It made life a bit easier for us, and it probably meant we'd have made more money as well through this particular process.